City Economic Development Corporation, his work cuts across the public, private, philanthropic, and academic sectors. That's 4 in 1. So we're really excited, and please join me in giving a warm round of applause as I invite to the stage now Professor Fred Olayele. It's Olayele. Yes, Professor.
Thank you very much for the very warm introduction. And good morning, Nigeria. Happy Independence Anniversary. And let me start on a very light mode. You just heard my last name butchered, so that's not new, I got used to that since I was in elementary school, and all of my siblings, So, no problem. Let me start by thanking the Covenant Nation and Pastor Boju for this opportunity. And kudos and congratulations to the Platform Group for the amazing work of nation building. Ladies and gentlemen, ordinarily, a day like today should be for parade, celebration, and rejoicing, considering that the public policy development process in immediate post-independence Nigeria was largely influenced by the struggles for national sovereignty and policy autonomy. But as you can tell, life is hard in this country. Nigerians are overwhelmed. And today is indeed a solemn day, and one that calls for sober reflection. We are at a crossroads in Nigeria. And I keep wondering, how and where did we get it wrong? And perhaps it is not too late to realize that things are not working in this country. Things are not working. It's been 61 years. And it is not too late, Nigeria, to retrace our steps. We can, and indeed should, salvage Nigeria. It is a collective responsibility. But again, I'm not here to make you sober. I'm not here to be a prophet of doom. But at the same time, we have serious issues to contend with in this country. The polity in its current form is not sustainable. We cannot continue on this trajectory. Again, before I unpack my speech for today, I would like again to thank the organizers, the platform, Pastor Poju and his team. They are doing an amazing job. When you look at the political economy of our country in the last 61 years, let's just say it the way it is. The ruling class has failed us, okay? Their sheer arrogance is not helping Nigeria. But it is not too late. We can retrace our steps. We can get serious for once. We can get serious. I grew up here, had my elementary and high school and university education, worked for some years before I left. Too bad that the uncle, read out the summary of my bio, In addition to, butchering my last name, my dad would be mad in his grave, So for context, I mean, I sent a much more detailed biography. I don't know how that got summarized into just 3. I operate across 4 domains. Okay, I'm a professor in 2 universities. About 2-3 years ago, I accepted to be chief economist for New York. But primarily, I run a center, the Center for African Research and Business at Carleton University in Ottawa. I teach business, FDI, and trade. And prior to that, I was also a professor in the western part of Canada, the University of Regina in Saskatchewan. I taught in the economics faculty there for about 6 years. And I'm also the president of a think tank called the Economic Innovation Institute for Africa. But all in all, in about 20 years, of my policy, research, and industry exploits, Nigeria has always been a case, And let me say beforehand that I'm aware that I have 55 minutes for this talk. So I thank the organizers for the generosity. But at the same time, you know that economists are said to be jack of all trades, right? Master of none. So we do everything, and we can hardly do one well. But as a member of the profession, I can also tell you that the one thing that we do very well is optimization, right? When it comes to optimizing. So my 55 minutes, I'm going to do some good optimization. Maybe give 2 minutes back to Pastor Poju. But I'm not going to leave it at the end of 40 minutes. And yes, I think my trick is working. I wanted to really calm everyone down, given that my opening speech was a little bit frank. But really, ladies and gentlemen, today I really want to provide a quick historical background on the political economy of federalism in Nigeria. You must have all seen the title of my topic. I want to talk about how we can remake federalism in this country. And I'm going to be asking 5 philosophical questions today. I'm going to be asking 5 philosophical questions. And I'm not here to throw banters at the politicians. No, that's not why. I mean, I didn't come all the way from New York to come throw banters with politicians here. I'm here to address the organized private sector. The organized private sector and the middle class in Nigeria. How can we take our country back? We need to salvage Nigeria. The first speaker talked about the revolution happening in the digital sector. There's a lot happening in that sector. The fight for the soul of Nigeria is on. And in my 2 decades of academic research, professional engagement, I think policy laziness has taken us far back. The political class has not innovated policy. Policy laziness has set us back miles. It is now time to make critical decisions about the future that we desire for our children and their children. Look, let me tell you a quick joke. When I left our city group for graduate studies in Canada, after my master's degree, I told myself, after my PhD, I'm returning to Nigeria the second day. I plan to return to Nigeria the second day. I grab an appointment in Lagos, Abuja, or Ondo, wherever. I was damn serious. And I was one of the few Nigerians back in the day who would ask Nigerians who had been in Canada for over 10, 15 years. I'm always like, what are you still doing here? 15 years, go back and be part of the polity and contribute. So I'm here, I get very emotional here. That at this point in time, I am still in North America. It's okay, technology has changed the face of everything. But for too long, we have been too lazy to innovate policy. And we always like to talk about politicians. I like the second speaker again, the second speaker, the first speaker, she said, politicians, Nigeria. Who is Nigeria? Who are politicians? You and I. You and I, we are Nigeria. Because without your power and vote, they don't get there. But I'll get to that in a second. So the current governance model and defective federalism has failed us woefully. It is time to fix the mess in this rentier state, in this rentier economy, which has brought so much pain, agony, joblessness, poverty of ideas, and self-hatred upon us. Let's call it what it is. The model of federalism has failed Nigeria. Let's not pretend. It is time to innovate. It is time to retool federalism to make it work for everybody. And one of the finest arguments for federalism is the fact that subnational units are effective policy labs, or what some call laboratories of democracy. It is one of the finest arguments why federalism is good for multi-ethnic, multi-religious countries. Because most successful policy innovations happen at the regional level, and then they can be scaled and adopted nationally through what we call policy diffusion. Jurisdictions often learn from best practices elsewhere. So the question really is, why are we not taking innovation seriously in this country? You look at North America, what you call Medicare today. It was birthed in the province of Saskatchewan. And after testing it, within 10 years, it was scaled across the country, became a nationalized public health model for all of Canada. You go to the United States, I don't need to tell you that Massachusetts started what is today called Obamacare to expand healthcare coverage for low-income people. These are classic examples of how, in a federation, your federating units are supposed to be laboratories where you test ideas through experimentations. And if they are successful, then you scale it. So I have a quick question. For the audience. And the question goes thus. How many of us here had iPhones or high-speed internet or even cell phones in the year 1999? Just do me a favor. In 1999, when we returned to civil rule, how many of us had cell phones, high-speed internet, or even cell phones in 1999? Do me a favor, if you had one of those three items, just you can indicate by raising your hand. Okay. I guess no one, neither myself. So thanks to the liberalization policies of the era, by the early 2000s, cell phones became household items. But here's my point, ladies and gentlemen, here's my point. If technology has changed our lives dramatically in the last 21 years, since the return to civil rule, and we are happy to embrace all of the innovations, the disruptions that have come with that, then what's the whole fuss? What's the whole fuss about fixing defective federalism in Nigeria? What have we been looking at in the last 21 years? It is obvious that the 1999 Constitution is the antithesis of development and national unity in our country. Everybody agrees. And when I read the pages of newspapers and speeches, that's what everybody talks about. Defective federalism, fraudulent federalism, okay? Of course, extended periods of military rule did irreparable damage to our political economy and national values. But to fully make sense of things, I always like to look back at least to the immediate post-independence period. You may argue, for all you care, that Nigeria's current situation is partly the outcome of various historical and political economic dynamics in the context of colonial rule and the struggle for independence and decolonization. But all these things have implications for the transformation of economic systems across the continent. Nigeria is not alone. And I laugh when people compare Nigeria with Canada or the US or Switzerland. Give me a break. Give me a break. There's a whole reason there was this whole struggle for independence and how our economic systems became reprogrammed after the various countries achieved independence, from Kwame Nkrumah to Julius Nyerere. So if you want to trace the political economic dynamics of Nigeria, you better start from 1960 and then calibrate and look at the evidence. So enough of the arrogance of the ruling class in this country and their policy laziness. There's a guy by the name John Dryden. He's an English poet and literary critic of the 17th century. He wrote extensively about laziness, and I picked one of his favorite quotes. He said, "We make our habits, and then our habits make us." Every time you are making a decision because it is the easier pathway, then you are feeding the monster called laziness. The fight for the soul of Nigeria is on. We have a choice to make. And guess what? Guess what? In my opinion, it is an economic choice. It is not a political choice. I haven't come here to discuss politics. I am here to talk economics and policy. So now, let's get right into this. The federal system is basically about shared rule. And the philosophy behind the political, economy, and constitutional arrangement is the notion of unity in diversity. Unity in diversity, that's what it is all about. Fiscal federalism and political decentralization remain a huge challenge in this country due to governance failures, institutional constraints, and structural problems like fragmentation and excessive dependence on oil rent. I mean, to put things into perspective, let's remind ourselves what federalism is all about again. There are many definitions, but let's look at a comprehensive definition by one of the leading scholars on comparative federal systems, Ronald Watt. He was a professor emeritus at Queen's University in Canada. In his exact words, he said federalism is basically not a descriptive, but a normative term, and refers to the advocacy of multi-tiered government combining elements of shared rule and regional self-rule. It is based on the presumed value and validity of combining unity and diversity, and of accommodating, preserving, and promoting distinct identities within a larger political union. So the essence of federalism is it's a normative principle due to the perpetuation of both union and non-centralization. Two key words. You preserve union and non-centralization. Let me break it down. Let me unpack it. You know, we seem to be missing something in the Nigerian context. And that is the fact that institutional conditions that inform the public policy development process vary significantly across federal systems. When you look at the constitutional history of the United States, you know, you see two key manifestations. You see dual federalism and cooperative federalism. And even when you examine other federal states, other jurisdictions organized along federalist grounds, from Argentina to Spain, Germany, South Africa, Pakistan, you know, you find the same element. So while the goal of these governance structures and institutional arrangement is to create and enable governments to fulfill their social contract. Dual federalism emphasizes that both the federal and regional governments are co-equals, and they have to legislate in a separate sphere. But as I said earlier on, let me not really get into the nuances of constitutional law here. I'm an economist, so I will let the constitutional law experts go into the details. Let's unpack the economics. And next, I want to now ask the 5 philosophical questions for the ruling class in Nigeria. I want to ask those 5 questions. I was initially going to prepare a deck, so we can show those 5 questions, but for some reason, that's not happening. So if you don't mind, you can take note of those questions. And at the end of the day, or maybe when I get back, I'm happy to send this paper to the platform so they can share with participants. The first question here is, who is to blame for the current state of our nation? I'm not asking you to give me an answer. That's okay. I'm not asking you to give me an answer, Who is to blame for the current state of the nation? It's okay, don't get into trouble. Don't even answer that question. I know that the new saying around town is that if we fail to get it right in 2023, that is going to be the end of Nigeria. People have said that a lot. And my response to that? Not true. We've had far worse predictions than that in the past. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Nobody is happy with the current state of affairs. Absolutely nobody. But my point is, why should our national development discourse be tied to the usual 4-year political cycle? Why? Why? Once it's 2 years to elections, the predictions start to come. Yes, in 1995, I was in Oregon, in Ikeja, and you knew all of the crises then. Every morning we would go to the news table, right? You go there to buy punch or what have you. We used to have one old man, a septuagenarian, maybe 79. He was a high school graduate, he would come. You had your money, you were going to buy the newspaper anyways, but you had to listen. You had to listen to his analysis. He had to interpret the implications of what the papers were reporting. So we'll go there with your brains, but you left with what Baba said. And there was one particular day, it was after Kudrat was assassinated. That was a very low ebb, in our national history. We were all crying there, crying, yelling, and the Baba came. Baba came. I had bought my own newspaper, ready to go. He came. And he said, okay, this is it. What is up for you? Nigeria, this is the end. And for my folks in New York, Nigeria to Pipapata means this is the end of Nigeria. Let me translate that in case you are watching this. But here's my point. Nigeria did not mean Pipapata. It didn't break. It did not. So my point here is that this whole issue raises a fundamental question. Many Nigerians jubilated at the outcome of the 2015 election, including some members of the incumbent party that had just lost that election. Why? Because many thought that the scale of corruption, profligacy, rent-seeking, and insecurity in the country was not acceptable. I had just finished teaching a class that evening, and I saw scenes of Nigerians, professors, everybody jubilating, drinking, all over. And given the military and frugal disposition of the new leader that had just been elected, we thought that all of our problems would vanish in 4 years. Here we are. But again, I have said it, I've caveated it at the beginning. I'm not here to discuss politics. I'm here to talk economics and policy. In other words, my dear wife and 2 boys are waiting for me in New York. So Fred Olayele is discussing economics and policy. Let me move on to the second question. Nigerians, don't forget, take note, please write down those questions. Is it time to adopt a different governance model in Nigeria? Is it time to adopt a different governance model in this country? The federal system is basically about shared rule. And as I've said earlier on, the philosophy behind this is about the notion of unity in diversity. You know, under the 1963 Constitution, political federalism operated under 4 regions. You know, though a federal system by design, decades of military rule have resulted in centralization of the federation, and in many ways, turning a multi-ethnic and culturally diverse federation with 36 autonomous states and a federal capital territory into a centralized system with all elements of absolute fiscal centralism and unitarism. This is not acceptable. Is the Nigerian state a dysfunctional federation? Or should we just conclude that federalism has failed us and it is time to adopt a different governance model? Let me bring some statistics into this. Let me bring some statistics into this. Out of the 195 countries or so in the world, 25 of them have federal political systems. But out of those 25, 40% of their citizens make up 40% of the world population. So do the math. What does that tell you? It tells you that big countries tend to gravitate towards federalism. Also, when you look at economic history and trace the development trajectories of some of the most powerful countries today in the world, you find that somewhere along the line, they have all been organized along federalist ground. From the late 16th century to the mid-17th century, the Dutch, Netherlands, it was federalism that gave them all of the branches. England, our very own England, from the late 17th and early 18th century, even to mid-19th century, federalism helped a lot. Of course, not officially, not on paper. Not on paper, we know England is unitary, okay, but in practice, when you unpack the key elements of economic development process in Britain, you find that federalism was at the heart of it. And that helped them all through the Industrial Revolution from 1760 to 1840. And then the United States, from the late 19th century to date. Yet, you'll be surprised that even the poster child of political unitarism, China, is even more fiscally decentralized than India and Australia. Think about that for a second. Let me check the time here. Okay. Think about that for a second. China is more fiscally decentralized than India and Australia. So we should not be too carried away with the nuances of federalism in Nigeria. At the end of the day, we all agree and unite on one common thing, that from Kaduna to Calabar, and from Ibadan and Enugu to Jos and Maiduguri, we want our youth to be gainfully employed. It's very basic. We want to live on safe streets. Are we asking for too much? And have access to basic necessities and a national brand that we can all be proud of. So we can wave the green passport, when we are in major airports, in global capitals of the world. You don't have to put your Nigerian passport and put the Canadian one here and look at the scenario before you decide which one to show. With freedom, human rights, and dignity accorded every single soul. Nigeria! Come on. This is possible. possible? I don't know how many Muslims are here. This platform is being organized by a Christian organization, but we have Muslims here. So why then when it comes to election, everybody is divided along Islamic, Christendom, or what have you? Who cares? Who cares? I mean, who cares? How does a Nigerian from Caltech University get called up to come and be chief economist in New York? Who cares? All said, I still believe, and this is my personal opinion, that federalism is still the best governance model for Nigeria. And I will explain in a second. It is not like we haven't tried anything else. Regionalism was at its best in the First Republic. You may say that it promoted ethnic loyalty, which led to the instability and the successive coup d'etat. But times have changed. The innovation economy is here. Mrs. Johnson just walked us through what is happening in the digital sector. Innovation is here. We are now, in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. Tech-enabled businesses in the finance, renewable energy, agribusiness sectors can change the destiny of this country. I was talking with one of the highly respected Nigerians in the organized private sector 2 days ago. And yesterday he sent me a piece, in an article he had just read, that in spite of the difficult business environment, Nigeria has produced 5 unicorns within 1 year. 5 unicorns. Flutterwave, InterSwitch, Paystack, mention them. And with a few others that are likely to hit the $1 billion threshold before the end of this year. Think about that for a second. So why has the ruling class failed to take baby steps around federalism? Why didn't they move the needle? I don't want to go into too much of theories, but theoretical underpinnings around policy change support this. Thank you. I like a guy in the US, an academic, Charles Lindbaum. He has written a lot about incrementalism in policy change. And he said incrementalism is a way to make policy innovation happen through baby steps. Let's face it, I'm very pragmatic. I'm very pragmatic, and that's why maybe I've done 30 minutes in this speech. I have not mentioned any politicians' names. I'm very pragmatic. You can blame them for all you care. All of us here, if you're elected today to become the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you are not going to give away your powers. You are not going to. The powers that accrue to that office is enormous. Nobody will get there and start saying, okay, come and take my powers. And that's why I'm saying the solution to our problem is economic, at least in the short to medium term. Lindbaum says, policy innovation occurs in gradual phases by improving on previous policies. The outcomes tend to be more efficient than when policy changes occur in a revolutionary manner. So in his view, incrementalism is a framework for reducing policy risk by engaging in trial and error to fix the deficiencies in the status quo. Incrementalism recognizes the tensions inherent in pluralistic situations, where multiple actors and varying political considerations and interactions need a consensus in the public policy development process. We saw what happened last year during the NSAS protest. Anti-barriers and institutional constraints around vested interest, cultures, and defense mechanisms put in place around political subsystems are disrupted. Policy changes will only happen incrementally. So federalism needs retooling in Nigeria. And I don't like the fact that we often overflog politics again. Don't get me wrong. Politics is important. It is very important. But until Nigeria reduces the basis of the debate to economics and evidence-based analysis, Armchair theorizing and knee-jerk reactions from politicians, activists, and other actors in the public policy development process will lead us nowhere. We need to remake federalism by focusing on the economics. Let me move on to the next question. Who is afraid of decentralization in Nigeria? Who is afraid of decentralization in Nigeria? Let me argue it economically. The ongoing debate for the soul of Nigeria is in order. But we need to be careful of sensationalism. Let's not allow politics to overshadow the economics. I know that the political temperature is beginning to rise. And it can only get hotter in the next 17 months or so. The debate on striking the right governance model is a universal thing. From time to time, countries are always re-examining and tweaking the roles of players and institutions in their intergovernmental dynamics in order to improve their ability to fulfill their social contract. But the bone of contention in the Nigerian situation is essentially about the power of the federal government to intervene in the affairs of the state. Maybe it is more complicated than that, but at least as a framework, that is true to a large extent. And I've got news. Nigeria is not alone. Many federal systems across the world face a similar situation in which the degree of federal control varies dramatically. And the notion of market-preserving federalism can fix the incumbent frictions. I love a guy by the name Barry Weingast at Stanford. You know, he's written a lot about the political foundations of market. He argues that apart from the need to design economic systems effectively, in order for markets to function efficiently, political arrangements must ensure economic and political rights are guaranteed, that they are honored. Weingast investigated the role of federalism in economic transformation of England in the 18th century, the United States in the 19th and 20th centuries, and modern China. He also later looked at Russia's unique type of federalism and how that has prevented it from advancing policy innovation to achieve inclusive development. In essence, folks, we need a decentralized governance model that explains the differential economic performance of the 36 states. This is a framework that will help us unpack the key institutional ingredients that will support further decentralization. If we get it right, even the federal government will give up more powers, willingly. Willingly, the federal government will say, hey, you know what? I think the states or regions should handle this. But you don't do that through politics and armchair theorizing. And this is where the private sector comes in. The private sector and the upper middle class in Nigeria. The future of this country lies in the hands of upper middle class Nigerians. Listen to me, I did not say the billionaires. And I'm not talking about folks at the lower end of the spectrum of the socioeconomic ladder. I'm talking about the middle class. You will be surprised that the digital revolution and geopolitical forces that have caused a reversal of fortunes of some sort. Some of the regions in Nigeria that least expected may even become the beneficiaries of decentralization. Let's not submit to policy laziness. Decentralization is good for our country. Nobody is going to charge anyone. It's good for everybody. And I laugh a lot when people talk about going our separate ways. Really? Oh no, I laugh a lot. Oh, let's go our separate ways. I laugh. that is just going to complicate things, economically speaking. Given how smaller countries around us, I run a Center for Africa, so I'm not going to mention country names there. But given how smaller countries around us are rebranding themselves, doing very well on the global stage, and then you are talking about disintegration in Nigeria, that will spell doom for us. Because you do that, then you give away your last strength, the only strength that you are selling. And who knows? What's that strength? It's your size. Your size. That's the only thing that is holding Nigeria forward. The size. You ignore the size of Nigeria, you do it at your peril. Forget about all the problems we are facing. Without our size, 210 million people, close to $500 billion in GDP, you cannot ignore it. That is the only thing that is holding Nigeria. You lose that, you break up, forget it. You go into the ashes of history. In the Western Africa sub-region, forget it, forget it. Much unlike the industrial clusters of the 1990s, where industries in the same region are grouped together, for economic development programming. The innovation economy is here. It is different. They are tech anchored. And they are not sectors based. They are sector agnostic. They are based on tech. And you'll be surprised at the massive economic impact that will result from applying the right dose of technology and capital to the huge agricultural and mining endowments across this nation, across all 6 geopolitical zones. Nigerian governors, are you listening? Are you guys listening? The massive endowments across your state, you power it with technology and innovation economy. You will create jobs for your state. Let me move on to question number 4. I already said I will not exceed the 55 minutes that Pastor Poju gave me, so I don't turn to. So the fourth question number 4. Any economic lessons from other jurisdictions for a sustainable subnational fiscal autonomy model? Any lessons from other jurisdictions? Are there any lessons from other jurisdictions? Yes. I think we agree that the 1999 Constitution is highly defective. Yet, the world over constitutional design process cannot always envisage what would happen in the future. Let's look at Canada and the US. From the way it was originally designed, Canada was meant to be a highly decentralized federation with very few powers for the provinces, while the United States, in the contrary, was to be a highly decentralized federation with the state having enormous powers. But over history, what has happened? Due to a variety of reasons, and circumstances, the federal government of the US today is much more powerful than it was originally envisaged. Due to reasons, circumstances, like the Cold War, the American Civil War, and the superpower status of the US. On the other hand, the provincial economic model in Canada has become very robust over time due to the presence of a cultural, linguistic minority province, Quebec. Ladies and gentlemen, necessity is the mother of invention. Why are we stuck in Nigeria? So, on my way to Nigeria from New York, I had a stop over in a place called Las Palmas in Gran Canaria, Spain, which is very close to the Atlantic Ocean. I'm a visiting professor at the University of Las Palmas in the Canary Islands. I was there, spent some time there, and while I was discussing with one of my colleagues, one of my collaborators there, one academic, he was talking about a volcanic eruption that just happened. There's another city where there was a volcanic eruption in La Palma, different than Las Palmas. And we were chatting, and he said, Prof, this is the beauty of federalism. I'm like, what? You didn't even know I would be talking about federalism in Nigeria, I said, why did you say that, Prof? He said the volcanic eruption happened. The Canary Islands is a small island there, based largely on tourism. But before you knew it, the European Commission, from Belgium, they had sent, resources and other things to take care of things. Even here at home, in the immediate aftermath of the Boko Haram crisis, the federal government deployed resources, to help the situation and to restore stability. That is federalism at its best. That's what a federal system is designed to do. And another example is Canada. And this is one country, for obvious reasons that I have written extensively about. Canada has been a policy laboratory of sorts for Nigeria, for me, when I do research and policy design. And it is funny that many people don't often realize that despite Canada's many achievements in the energy, resource, and political fronts, federal-provincial relations could be very tough, particularly in terms of healthcare financing and federal climate policy proposals. It's always very tough. But guess what? Economics, empirical evidence, and innovation are key ingredients that often guide policy and programmatic interventions. And after the collapse of crude oil prices in 2014, what happened? The effort to decarbonize the Canadian economy, accelerated. And separatist sentiment became obvious in the province of Alberta, which is the equivalent of the Niger Delta here, because they own massive oil resources. But in spite of the calls for secession, all of that, you see that the federal government intervened through major policies to stabilize the polity. And in the aftermath, you had what we call the Canadian Innovation Supercluster Initiative. The Canadian Innovation Supercluster Initiative. What happened? Compared to their neighbor to the south, the United States, Canada understood that it was lagging in terms of productivity and that it needed to catch up. It then made a deliberate choice to recalibrate and build its innovation economy from the ground up. The Canadian Innovation Supercluster policy is designed to encourage small and medium-scale enterprises, large corporations, to collaborate and boost high-growth sectors in the innovation economy. And so in 2018, it was launched as a 10-year innovation system comprised of all the 5 major regions. So they were grouped together. If you had agriculture and the natural resources, you could combine 3 provinces into one. You go to the Atlantic region, there's what we call the Ocean Supercluster. It's a world-class cluster of all of the players in the ecosystem to power the economy of that region. 5, in the westernmost area, British Columbia, you have the Digital Supercluster. In a way, spatial barriers are torn away. Who cares about geography? As long as you belong in that ecosystem, come. And that's why even in a place like New York, you hear about things like the Cambridge-Boston corridor for life sciences. In Canada, you talk about the Toronto-Waterloo Innovation Corridor. People don't care about geography. So, I am talking about eating your cake and having it. Nigeria can do it, economically speaking. Policy innovation can create win-win outcomes, both on the economic and political sides. We should innovate. I think I'm running out of time. I haven't checked, but let me move on to the last question. Can we fix federalism by innovating Nigeria's economic system? This is the last question. Can we fix federalism by innovating our economic system? I believe that Nigeria's future is linked to policy innovation. It can play a major role in addressing the current disintegrative ethno-religious and communal tensions across the country. Before COVID, I would typically come to Nigeria twice a year. I just wanted to come twice a year. But I have to confess, for the first time in my life, I've been coming back this particular trip. The first day of arrival, I was in my hotel, and for the first time, I felt very vulnerable in the room. I'm like, I don't know because of what I had heard before coming. The warnings, your friends, I said, don't go. For the first time, I was there like, okay, God, I'm sleeping. It's okay. It doesn't have to be this way, guys. It doesn't. It does not have to be this way. It doesn't have to be. Agitations for restructuring are not new. in Nigeria. I mean, while an overhaul and restructuring of the federal system can be a part of the solution, the core economic argument has been ignored for too long. One of the major reasons countries adopt fiscal federalism is the gains that accrue, for a more efficient resource allocation and mobilization regime. So let's put it simply. Rent-seeking is the antithesis of development in Nigeria. The current centralization of political power in Abuja is causing major distortions because redistribution is elevated over productivity and political economy. It's so wrong. Where are the economists here who study bachelor, masters, or PhD in economics? Where are the economists? Any economists in this room? When you do Econ 101, you talk about, when you're building your models, efficiency, Pareto outcomes are key. Efficiency is key. Does that mean that you have to neglect or abandon the weak and vulnerable people? No. We got to take care of the old people, the jobless, low income. We will take care of them. But first thing first, put productivity first. When you have harnessed all of the gains, then we can take care of the others. It's the spirit of Ubuntu. I have a new book coming. I'll probably be back in Nigeria in December. It's on policy innovation in Africa. How did we get it wrong? Even continentally. You are building models, policy planning, and you are basing it off of individualism, self-interest in Western models. No. And as I said, I'm very pragmatic, and that's why before I engage on any policy research, there has to be outcome. There has to be impact. I don't just like to do research and publish in journals just for the sake of publishing. I don't do it. There has to be an impact. And let me tell you about how we do it in New York. Let me ask you a question. So New York is a global center for innovation and finance and entrepreneurship. That's the center of the world. The New York metro area has a GDP of about $1.8 trillion. New York metro area, $1.8 trillion. That's more than 4 times the GDP of Nigeria. Have you ever wondered how it is possible for some of the richest people on the planet to live in the same city with low-income people? You see super rich billionaires on the subway, and you see low-income people who make less than $20,000 per annum, and everybody is smiling, drinking coffee and reading newspapers. How is that possible? How is that possible? It is through what you call equitable regional economic development. Don't use the word redistribution. That's what I do there, policy research. How do you ensure that you share the gains of growth and productivity with other people? What is Joe Biden's problem with what is happening on the streets of Los Angeles or Chicago or New York? He's busy. He has to look after bigger stuff. USMCA, what we used to call NAFTA, Russia, China, Afghanistan, excuse me, and other multilateral issues. That's what serious federal governments do. That is what serious federal governments do. And when you look at the federal government in Nigeria, Abuja, listen. Have you heard about the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? Countries are busy designing policies that will have implications for the next 30 years for their countries. That's the preoccupation of serious federal government across Africa. The AfCFTA, how can you leverage it to bail yet unborn generations? We are here talking about Ruga, resin, seriously. You're talking about VAT, collect for me, don't collect. What is happening in this country? Don't collect, I can collect. Ruga, open grace. So, the time is now for Abuja to recruit serious trade policy professionals. I know you have a secretariat. You need 200 trade policy analysts examining impact, distributional implications for the next 30 years for the AfCFTA. You add central banking to it. Help MFLA, you know, all this dollarization. You know, give him capacity. Then maybe you add international affairs to that and manage your ambassadors overseas. That is enough. That is enough. Let the other people take care of themselves. Let them think about how to dispose their garbage or what kind of education they want for their kids. So, 5 questions, and what's the way forward? I'm a pragmatist, okay? Way forward. What do we need to do? Where do we go from here? Let me quickly tell you in 2 minutes the story of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a federal nation. It's a federalist system. Their prime minister, I like him so much, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in October 2019 for ending the 20-year conflict with Eritrea. That was in addition to overseeing unprecedented reforms, from transitioning the economy to a more market-oriented model and increasing women's participation in government, all within a relatively short period of time. But what happened afterwards? What happened afterwards? A rapid reversal in a matter of months due to the war in the northern Tigray region of the country. So you look at the promise and practice of federalism. They are frequently at odds. This reformist prime minister, you know, is currently focused on consolidating the achievements of his government by addressing the issues of regional cleavages and ethnic antagonisms in the multicultural governing coalition, which is backed by a federal constitution that grants autonomy to the country's 9 ethno-geographic regions. Listen to me, this is a paradox. It's an irony. Because the exact solution that people are clamoring for here in Nigeria is the antithesis of the peace in Ethiopia. Such is the complex nature of decentralization and decentralization debate, especially in low-income countries with weak institutions, poverty, corruption, and fragility. So, since federalism is a flawed governance model that does not have answers to many contemporary complicated problems, what is the way forward? It is time for Nigeria to make economics the core argument. It is time to redesign our economic architecture with the current flawed model by letting policy entrepreneurs rise up. And as I'm wrapping up, I am calling on policy entrepreneurs in Nigeria. Who are they? Who are policy entrepreneurs? They are key actors in the innovation process since they are interested in policy change. Policy entrepreneurs in the tradition of Joseph Schumpeter, the father of entrepreneurism. They are agents of creative destruction because they champion the pursuit of policy change by seeking ideas and collaborative approaches to help reduce inefficiencies. You can look it up later, but the term policy entrepreneur first came to the public policy lexicon, you know, when it was first used by American political scientist John Kingdon in 1984 in his seminal book. He said they are elected or unelected. They could be in or out of government. They could be in interest group or research organizations, but their defining characteristic is their willingness to invest their resources, time, energy, reputation, and sometimes money to ensure policy change. There is a special category of institutional entrepreneurs in the policy-making process. And in return for their expected rewards, they just want to see that their ideas and agendas are translated into policy actions. They're in geographies, in sectors. You think about agricultural extension officers who are all over the place. The farmers trust them more than Abuja. You think about change agents in churches, mosques. I don't need to tell you that Pastor Olayele is a policy entrepreneur. We're on his platform. He's causing change, getting people to think, you know, and so on and so forth. The upper middle class. So Nigeria needs to search and look for those policy entrepreneurs. Again, don't get me wrong. Politics is too important to be deprioritized. However, in a country like Nigeria with low institutional quality, where politics supersede everything, it is time to make economics the basis of this argument. From the Swiss cantons in Biafra to Arewa and Oduduwa, regional growth dynamics have implications for national unity and prosperity. And given the pace of digitization in the global economy, harnessing regional innovation capabilities for national unity remains compelling. That is the way forward. And civil society has a role here. But that's not enough. National and regional parliaments have a role. But it is also beyond them. Nigeria needs to reimagine, redesign, and deliver an innovative federal system that works for all. And economics must be at the heart of it all. And finally, to achieve the Nigeria of our dreams, we need to be able to ensure we don't rely too much on a one-size-fits-all model that causes confusion. And I'm going to end this by putting the platform, by putting Pastor Poju on the spot. You see, pragmatism is key. And Pastor Poju is very smart. When he was sharing that, he talked about the fact that, people would always ask him to implement and what have you, I'm like, oh gosh, I wanted to talk about that, but okay, I'm not going to ask him now to start to implement, But I think at least it is time the platform is now 15 or 16 years old. It is time to hire a research assistant to look at all of the speeches that have been made in the last 16 years and see which amongst those can be translated into concrete action plans. For all you care, I have people in Canada and the US, professors who are using the platform as their research, the repository for their research, masters and PhD students. Platform. The platform is a repository. You don't know how many masters and PhD theses have come out of the platform. So that's one. And secondly, I walk the talk. Talk is cheap. Talk is cheap, guys. I walk the talk. On the basis of that, I have the pleasure to say at this moment that I will be committing the next 5 years, working with the Covenant Nation and Pastor Poju to launch the Nigeria Innovation Supercluster Initiative. The acronym is NISI, N-I-S-I, Nigerian Innovation Supercluster Initiative. This is a project that will map the innovation ecosystem of Nigeria, using the 6 geopolitical zones as the basis, but over time, we will remove the spatial element and let it run based on endowment and skills. From Kano to Bina, to Yola to Asaba, to Akure and Nsukka, all powered by technology and the innovation economy. This will be a non-profit organization with a secretariat at the Covenant Nation, run by policy entrepreneurs, under the supervision of Senior Pastor Poju Oyemade, under the supervision, look at my hands now, under the supervision, and the idea, the same way this platform is under the supervision, but I know you have a lot of protocol officers, hidden guys who you don't see their faces, but they're doing tremendous job. And I say thank you. I say thank you to all of the volunteers, all of the partners. Thank you so much for what you are doing for Nigeria. You are all policy entrepreneurs making a change in our country. Thank you. Let me not forget the last sentence on this. So the idea behind this NISI is to show that focusing on the economics of federalism can move the needle for a great nation. Be on the lookout. Pastor Poju will update Nigerians as this takes off. For me, I'm going to be using my platforms over there in New York and Canada and Spain to also get collaborators. And it's a 5-year plan. I don't believe in short termism. Let's draft a 5-year plan that will transcend political cycles. And if you want to see how I disseminate my part of the deal, In the coming months, I'll be disseminating, not through my University or New York platform, but through my personal website, fredolayele.com. If you have the time in the coming months, check it out, fredolayele.com. I will disseminate whatever it is for our international partners. But for the Nigerian component, the covenant nation will roll it out and inform you. So, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Independence. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.